We're calling from council chamber. All right, so we would like to call this meeting back to order. We are back in public and will be.
I think the meeting started, but we can't hear.
Oh, can't you hear us? Are we good now? Good evening, Edmonton. I would like to call this meeting back to order. And we're back in public. We'll be back at item 7.5. But before I do that, I will do the roll call. Councillor Wright.
Good evening.
Councillor Knack.
Good evening.
Councillor Principe is unable to join us, right? And Councillor Paquette.
Oh, Councillor Stevenson is here.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Stevenson, of course. And Councillor Paquette. And Councillor Tang.
I'm here.
Councillor Hamilton can't join us. Councillor Rutherford.
Hello.
Councillor Salvador.
Hello.
Councillor Cartmill is unable to join us. Councillor Rice.
Here.
And Councillor Jans.
Good evening.
Okay, all right. So we are on to 7.5. We have a motion on the floor. And where were we on the list of questions?
Councillor Principe was next, and then it was Councillor.
Please come back. We need quorum. We lost quorum.
Yeah, we're back.
Can I leave? How many do we have right now?
Just hold on.
We have 9 right now, including online. As long as those online can, it would be helpful if some of those online could turn their cameras on so we can confirm that we have 7 at all times.
Okay.
I need to go grab my iPad. I forgot it upstairs.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Wright, go ahead. You had questions, right?
Yes, and should I only be asking on this motion?
No,
or-
the motion plus the report.
Okay, so I'm just wondering about the current commissionaires that are working in the stations. When I attend peace officer graduations and police officer graduations, there's a number that when they talk about their bios that they're former security guards or whatever. Is there a way of sort of maybe giving those that are current security guards the opportunity to apply for peace officers to take over some of these positions?
Well, I think they'd have to go through the training program. I'm not sure if David's is on the
Yep,
line, but
I'm here. Sorry, I'm online right now, but I think obviously with any growth, we would be doing some hiring, and as long as they meet our minimum criteria, which is on our website, then we're more than happy. And I think we've actually had some folks who are now TPOs who came from the commissioners' world. So it is part of the evolution in that. And so I'm not sure if we could guarantee everybody a spot because of the criteria that the province has us adhering to, but we can certainly give that a look.
But having worked in the transit system would bode well.
Well, I think some of our criteria is positions in security, and and having an understanding of that work is one of the things that we look for. There are a number of other things, as well as all the criteria that the provincial peace officer program sets out for us.
Okay, perfect.
And I don't know what the standards of hiring are for the commissioners, which is why I can't say a one-to-one crossover would be appropriate.
Okay, well, thank you, appreciate that. And then.
Can I ask my colleagues joining virtually to please turn on your camera? Carry on, Constable, right?
Okay, and then I was also wondering about, sorry, train of thought has been jumping back and forth today. Where's my questions? Just hang on.
I would please request my colleagues joining virtually to keep your cameras on.
Okay, while my colleagues turn their cameras on, I will ask another question, and I'm just wondering, are any of these new TPO positions, would they be working
I
with
see all the
COD?
cameras?
Well, we have a full complement of COT TPOs right now. We have the full complement of 7, but we are looking, especially through the activation with the EPS, we're looking for what gaps we have in the current delivery model and maybe reimagining what COT looks like in the future. But it's too early to telegraph what that might look like. But certainly we have a full complement already. The TPOs are part of a sign-up process. So those folks in COT rotate through depending on what their interest is as per their collective agreement.
Okay, so there's, I mean, rather than just strict enforcement, to have that opportunity to work with Pantero and that I think would be, I know I would appreciate that. And then to the move.
I mean, the way that we have it set up is a one-to-one partnership because that's how they ride around in the vans that we have. But certainly everybody in the TPO world is engaged with our COT teams and calls on them for support and referrals out in the system and knows how to activate those teams.
So they can draw on those resources if needed then? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then,
And they're working through most of our hours as well.
okay, perfect, thank you. And then to the mover, would you be amenable to, on point number 3, to removing downtown and just indicating hotspot locations that might be also outside the downtown area?
Yes, absolutely. I'm very supportive of that approach. I think we always want to be data driven with these deployments. So happy for that to be worked into the motion.
Would that be considered a friendly amendment?
I consider it friendly. I just don't know quite how to word it because it references option 3 in the report, which speaks to downtown, but maybe administration could advise on what wording we could add to this motion to provide that clarity. But I certainly find it
Just
friendly.
adding downtown and other hotspot locations.
Or just to be deployed at hotspot locations?
Yeah. Okay. We'll carry Councillor Knack.
Thanks, Mayor Sohi. So first question, because I might have some amendments here, but just to Mr. Jones, wanted to check. So I hear the desire to go all the way to option 4. At the same time, I'm wondering about how we make sure there's sort of coverage in all of the 19 stations where there's currently commissionaires, because I've heard the back and forth of, they did provide an observe and report benefit. You probably can't have full coverage with TPOs the whole time. So what does that look like? And specifically, I'll make the request of what would that look like if we moved the 200,000 from point 1 and the remainder of the budget, which is I think 1.4 million, into essentially point number 2. So giving you about $3.2 million to implement, I don't know, call it option 3.75.
Well, off the bat, I would have to go back to our costing sheets to figure out what that means for frontline TPO resources. It obviously it would land somewhere in between the 12 and the 30. What I can tell you is with option 4, it's not just about, and maybe I got caught up in this earlier. It's not just about being present during peak ridership hours. If you refer to the private attachment 3, you'll see that the proposed times would take us through all hours of service with our proactive resources. And so I'd want to go back to our costing sheets to see. It would be whether we favor, keeping as many patrol response cars available, or shifting that to maybe a slower response time for kind of lower level things, but really prioritizing that proactive approach that I've talked about. And so, I would favor the proactive approach because I think that's where we really get
agreed.
the outcomes.
Yeah.
What I would say is right now, the way that we're staffing is to what is the minimum number of TPOs we need to get through any given shift at any given time. With the increase in folks at the end of transit service that we saw in all of our LRT stations, we had to double the number of people available overnight that is outside of when the trains and buses are even operating. And I think with any minimum staffing, we start compromising our effectiveness in addressing transit safety. We start compromising employee health and well-being. And so, this is where that's why I favor option 4, obviously, because we can start looking at more than just the minimums.
Yeah, and maybe to Ms. Houghton McDonald, because I also favor option 4, but at the same time, I love the idea that we could have the safety attendant, I think as it's been described, to have somebody there that's actually cleaning and be a presence at more stations, or at least a similar amount to what we've done. And so, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I essentially what I would probably amend is looking to increase 0.2 from 1.8 million to 3.6, and essentially call it a modified option 4, to Mr. Jones's point around a proactive piece. And that would still leave us with 0.3 for the safety attendants. But I'm just trying to get a sense of what people, what does the administration as a whole want? I know what Mr. Jones wants, because I think that's right, and my heart says that's a great idea, but if it means Jasper Place Transit Center or any one of the other ones that members of council have mentioned aren't going to have any real presence at 10 o'clock at night, I'm a little hesitant to go all into option 4 versus, 2/3 or 3/4 of the way in option 4.
And I think, Councillor, what you're pointing out is the difficulty with trying to do more with the same budget.
Yep.
And it is very, very challenging. And that's why, as administration, and we're all on the same page, and I don't want to make it sound like there's different perspectives, because it's hard. And I think it does mean, and we were really transparent in the report, you are going to have stations that have static coverage today, and you won't have that in this model. We're evolving it to something different.
Yeah.
And it would be that mobile, groups of teams. And I think Dave's done a good job of outlining kind of the approach and what they intend to achieve. Honestly, we will be ready to implement whatever the outcome is. And I want to do a really solid evaluation plan and bring forward that those results for whatever the layers look like, so that we can all have a really informed discussion about what has happened as a result of the change. But I think what you're touching on is just the real difficulties around trying to get more with the same pie.
Exactly.
This is definitely a trade-off conversation. I think at the end of the day, we looked at, how do we have an impact, right?
Yep.
So when we looked at kind of leaning into one thing that we know we can have an impact on, we lean into this because we've seen it, we've tested it, we've trialed it, and then if we can create a program around this, you're trying to drive a program approach so you can make sure you're driving down the numbers. Now, we know we can have an impact this way, which is why leaning into that option that was recommended is the option we would recommend.
Okay. I'm out of time, and I'll think about it and how we amend. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Wright?
No, I don't know why I'm on
Oh,
there
you were
again.
the first one to start. Councillor Jans?
I think I'm okay right now. So yeah, take my name off.
You okay for now? Okay. Councillor Rutherford?
Yeah, I think I need to get clarity on the consequences of sort of the two. In my mind, even though we have a motion in front of us, what was originally proposed in if we receive for information, and that, you would go forward. What does that look like? Can I get a fulsome picture of what that looks like versus what's before us right now?
I can give a quick, like in my own words.
Yeah,
We've
please.
got $5 million with static deployment of commissionaires at 19 different stations.
19, okay.
What we'd be doing is taking that $5 million and balancing the capacity to train peace officers, likely in 2 different batches, winding down commissionaires while we hire and train TPOs. And so there'll be a period of time where we're winding down commissionaires and training TPOs. Those TPOs get deployed into the various stations, and then we do that again. And so then there's a cost-neutral transition from commissionaires to 30 more peace officers.
That's if we had received this for information as the report
That
had
is
recommended.
administration's
Recommendation.
best professional advice.
Yes, and so based on what, you know, and I might go to the mover depending on my timing here, but based on how you understand this motion before us right now, what does this do?
Yeah, my
Like, what would
interpretation
you
of-
do, like, okay, if this passes, what would you go away and do based on this?
I would say, we would move forward with all of these different options. On option 3, we would likely take it away in terms of the safety attendant program and have to do a little bit more research in terms of scope, how we would tender out that work. So I think there'd be a little bit of work on how we would tackle 3 based on the way this is worded. But bullets 1 and 2 were options in the report. So like Carrie mentioned, you know, administration's able to operationalize these.
Yeah.
These are all tangible, viable options.
I think operationalizing, I have no doubt you can operationalize whatever is directed of you within that if we say keep it status quo, if we say do option 4, that's not what I'm getting at in terms of a question. I'm getting at what, and I hear that it's admin's best advice. So why is the motion in front of us not ideal in terms of reaching our safety outcomes that we're trying to achieve on our transit?
If I can, it's Jen over here.
Yeah, hi Jen. I was like, there's a voice in the sky.
That's right, it's the angel voice, just teasing. If I'm understanding what your question is about the impact of going the way administration has recommended versus what this motion is suggesting.
Exactly, yes.
And I would say it's diluting our effort. I think it is diluting.
This motion on the floor.
Correct. It is my recommendation that we've seen transit safety be a challenge. You've had numerous quarterly reports that delineate the challenges that we are experiencing in that space. And in order for us to not have an impact on tax levy, we are trying to be creative and innovative and trying to find which layer of authority will be most effective given the kind of disorder that we are facing. So when you look at the kinds of incidences that are happening in transit spaces, respectfully, security guards are very, very good at reporting, but then we have to call another uniform in to address what has been observed.
And then we also have in that report that came before us, that Carrie presented with some of the options, it also shored up, and I think the mayor made a motion because, for example, our TPOs don't have the same authority, like when in traffic, to speed up and expedite to get to when there is that call. Is that correct?
That's right. And so the whole enhanced authorities conversation is live right now as well.
It is live, okay.
And if I can jump in, one of the constraints that we have with enhanced authorities is the number of staff that we have available to do the work. Because if we're taking on enhanced authorities,
You need the capacity to do that.
we need the capacity to do that. And so it's another piece of the balancing act that if we're going to take on warrant arrests and simple assaults and the other things that are listed under the Peace Officer Act, that all takes more time and takes us away from transit spaces or other spaces in the city. And so we really have to look at our staffing levels in order to make sure that we can balance that. So it may not be appropriate to look at all of the enhanced authorities without a comparable increase in our staffing.
Okay.
Or some sort of other service delivery change.
Okay, no, I appreciate that context. Appreciate that, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Tang.
Great, thank you very much. So I've been pretty consistent with my concern around safety on the Valley Line, Southeast. And in the past, You know, I continue to receive stories and, you know, rider experience, although, you know, certainly perhaps not, in some cases not to the same level. And I have heard from you, from administration before, that in order to deploy what we have currently, they need to be hotspot. Valley Line Southeast is not a hotspot yet. And then my question becomes, how do we prevent it from becoming a hotspot to begin with? So if you were to address my concern like that, proactive patrol will be part of the answer, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it's not, you know, a dedicated hotspot for our TCAT team, we do have other opportunities to deploy for really directed activities with our patrol teams when they're not tied up with other calls for service. But certainly our goal is always to make sure that we catch things before it comes a hotspot, because as I mentioned earlier, hotspots become durable over time and need a lot more effort and energy in order to unwind that. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at for sure. And I know that our train team especially is on the Valley Line Southeast as much as they can be to make sure that there's that presence there.
And Councillor Tang, if I can just also offer, I've heard from not only you, but from a number of your councillor colleagues, concerns about specific presence at different stations. And we can only do that with more TPOs. So that there's a correlation there in terms of just general capacity.
Yeah, and I was going to speak to that maybe perhaps during the speaking too. Like, I am really struggling with this motion. You know, I provided some input into it, but I am kind of struggling. I guess, Carrie, transit safety has always been a very multifaceted approach, but this time around, with that 5 million, you didn't recommend a multifaceted approach. You recommend a targeted approach, really to driving home this point about, I mean, I'm interpreting it as driving home this point about we have very constrained resource. Where is the most tangible impact we can make?
Yeah, I think what we're saying is, and, you know, again, balancing benefits and trade-offs, we think this is the best next step to try. I will say there were safety and security challenges dating back 10 years ago. This is an ongoing thing that we constantly tinker with and are trying different measures. And this is administration saying, this is what we want to do. I want to measure it really closely, evaluate it, have ongoing conversations. And does that mean in the future, you know, we try something else? It could be.
Yeah.
But for right now, this was administration's plan that we put forward.
So it doesn't mean we can't change. It doesn't mean that we don't necessarily have another opportunity down the road. Just so I can understand for that option 4, though, it sounds like you'll have 2 batches or 2 cadres of graduation and hiring. And that stagger implementation, like you won't be fully deploying that 5 million right off the bat, right?
So we have a transition plan mapped out. So David's branch, my branch, Tana, who's on the line, we've been collaborating to understand what David needs from a hiring and training perspective. So we're going to use our data, so similar to what you saw in the attachment in terms of the commissionaire activities, and we're going to gradually phase them out. Following whatever decision gets made today, we're going to have an implementation team. We'll work on a really solid communications plan and be very transparent about that transition plan and what people can expect. And we're going to have to really promote all of the other tools that riders have, because there are riders that use the guards a lot. So we got to help them through this to know what their options are if they see something happening. So it's an opportunity for us to really hone in on that rider-focused comms plan.
And then, so just on the reporting, you know, Jen, I'm hearing from you that there will still be some level of reporting, but maybe just not as much as what the commissioners were doing. I guess part of, you know, would we have to really kind of encourage the public to get, you know, like, I don't know, like, because I'm worried about gaps and how are we going to, you know.
Of course, but part of the analysis that went into making this recommendation to council was recognizing all of the things that you're concerned about and coming forward and saying, based on the data, based on the kind of disorder, based on all of the things that ETS has in terms of safety, from blue phones to texting to all the public education campaigns that are out there and the passenger experience, we believe that increasing our TPO complement is going to create the coverage and responses that will enhance transit safety.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just add, I think the goal is if we get more boots on the street with TPOs, we can be in those places before calls happen in order to interrupt them and disrupt that activity rather than wait for it to happen and somebody call us.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate the discussion and some of the tensions and back and forth. I'm not sure if there was a motion that was brought forward, or if that's going to be brought forward to have that citywide lens. I just want to clarify a few pieces. So, just a few themes that have come out in the other conversations. So, in terms of future flexibility, would hiring TPOs not be a bit more of a harder decision to undo? So if we started with maybe halfway towards a fuller complement, sort of measure some of those impacts, wouldn't that be easier to scale up rather than to scale down?
I think, and we actually chatted about this as a team, but I think one of the issues that we'd have is if we hired half of the complement, again, it would be watering down what we think the service delivery would be. And so we couldn't actually measure it and evaluate it in the same way as if we had the full complement. With that said, there's always natural attrition with our team. And so, if we were told to scale back, then, that's something that we could maybe look at. But certainly I'm not sure if we could evaluate a half a thing.
Okay, well, and I think we could also consider things to be incremental growth. And again, we've added TPOs sort of on an incremental basis throughout our term. I guess I'm just also this framing, what I think I keep hearing, and I'm just a bit confused by, is sort of looking at option 3 as a deficit or a decrease. So being below minimum staffing levels. But option 3 is still an absolute increase in the number of TPOs, correct?
Sure, 12 more TPOs. But what I said earlier was, despite the sort of 25 or so odd TPO growth that we've had in the last 4 years, we're still at a deficit from where we were 4 years ago because the call volume that has increased substantially over those same 4 years. And so, I think we're at a point now that, like I said earlier, we're staffing to bare minimums to get through a shift, which is not healthy or sustainable in the long run. So we actually need to recalibrate what we're doing right now from a service delivery standpoint. So yes, it would be 12 net new TPOs, and we would still want to dedicate those to more proactive time, but it would still mean that we'd have to reconsider what we're doing overall.
Yeah, and just to that, I think you referenced earlier, Operation Unify had been planned on the basis of these 30 new peace officers. Did I hear that correctly?
No, what we built into, or at least in the back of my mind as we engaged with the EPS, is if, we went through with this program, we would be able to make Operation Unify something that was kind of business as usual. We'd be able to match up one TPO or a TCAP team with the EPS tracks team. We'd be able to deploy 21 hours a day with those proactive resources. Whereas, right now we're already still looking at bringing in overtime in order to match up resources with the EPS, which won't be sustainable for very long, given our budget. So it wasn't built because of this, but just in the back of my mind, thinking about how to make this sustainable in the long term. That's something that I've tried to include in our planning.
Okay, well, and maybe there were just some assumptions in that planning that I wasn't aware of. So there's an expectation that there's a 1-for-1 with every EPS officer committed. Can you just help me understand that a bit more?
Yeah,
I thought there was only 50 on tracks.
Correct, but we still have to maintain, and I mean, right now with 96 TPOs, they're not all working at the same time. We've presented who's working at what time in attachment 3, but that's 96 people stretched over 24/7 period. And so right now with those short burst hotspot locations that we're doing for Operation Unify, we're deploying a 1-to-1 ratio of 2 TPOs and 2 EPS officers at one.
Okay, great. And then last question. Did I hear earlier that TPOs rely on vehicles instead of train to get from one station to another?
Well, we have a blend in our patrol resources, especially in order to respond across the entire transit network. Yes, they are using vehicles. Because if
thanks, that's
something
my time.
happens at Jasper Transit Center, we can't take the bus there.
Or the train. Yeah, no, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rice.
Thank you. Really appreciate all the options here. Just one first question. As original presented, if this is received as information, so does that mean city administration is going to proceed with enhanced citywide TPO deployment in option 4 and a request for APC equipment in option 5? So
That is, sorry, Councillor, it's Carrie. I was just going to say that is correct. So in the fall budget process, we'll talk about the Canada Public Transit Fund and the APC component to see how we might be able to pull that off. And it means we'd proceed with the citywide enhanced TPO plan.
Okay, that's great. So in terms of financial piece, the financial piece for the option 4 is $5 million ongoing. So I heard this $5 million is already approved in the budget, so it's not additional request.
That's correct.
Right?
It's part of our ETS base operating budget, and there's no tax levy impacts being requested.
Okay, so that is for option 4. For the option 5, that is one time. So I heard in the full budget, you're going to request certain money and to cover that cost
So
for the one time, or is it?
Yeah, we have a couple of options. So because we're doing a phased, David has 2 phases of hiring and training plans. So it's a phased reduction of the commissionaires. If we needed to access one-time funding, we could do it that way, but we may have other options. We're just going through the analysis of CPTF. That's why in the fall, we'll bring forward what we think is the best option, but there might be alternatives we can explore to access that 700,000 and have the rest of it paid through CPTF. So more to come on that one.
So no matter which options you will come in to cover that cost and will not have an impact on the tax levy as well.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that confirmation. So the next question, and then I really like the professional advice provided by administration. So by implement option 4 and option 5, but at the same time, we still explore use of the grants to enhance station activation. Can you tell me a little bit more about what's your plan for this grant? Where you're going to fund this grant to really explore use and to enhance station activation?
Yeah, I would say the research is actively underway. I don't have a lot of details right now, but our team is digging and looking for different grant opportunities. So I'd say just give us another month or 2, and hopefully we can have developed some options and then can share information with council.
Okay, so right now the direction you just lead, receive this as information, and you can proceed with enhanced citywide TPO deployment and option 4, and then request for APC equipment in option 5. Then they will give you some time to explore use of the grants to enhance station activation. So my summary, correct?
Correct. That's what we outlined in the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, that's wonderful. So then my next question to the mover, based on the recommendation from administration, what do you think the motion on the floor could be more efficient to reach the outcome? And then actually this is a plan in front of us, try to achieve for that sustainable progress and for the long-term improvements. Can you tell me a little more about what you're thinking on that piece?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So my motion is based on a number of conversations we've had in the past around the different elements that feed into people's perception of safety on transit. And so absolutely, enforcement, having TPOs and EPS members is incredibly important in that, not only for the experience of safety, but perception of safety. But we also know that cleanliness plays a huge role, positive social interactions, having vibrancy in this space. Those are all also components that our own data and other research shows. It's what CUDA also recommends in some of their safety recommendations in terms of having that holistic approach. So it's really, again, it's a both and, recognizing the importance of peace officers, expanding their complement, but also addressing those other pieces as well.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Salvador?
Yeah, thank you. Just trying to pull together what Councillor Knack was suggesting about a hybrid option 3 that would be more than the 1.8. I believe that's what he was suggesting. That's currently outlined in the motion, but also what Councillor Wright was suggesting about a modified option 3 that doesn't necessarily focus just on downtown, but takes more of a data-driven approach and focuses on hotspots. I guess I'm wondering if it makes more sense to do a modified option 4 because that the hotspot model is sort of built into that but potentially at a slightly different funding level. I guess I'm wondering if that makes sense to administration. If there is a desire to see more of that hotspot approach that is data driven, am I correct in understanding that that's built into option 4?
I think what you're touching on is how we worded the options in the report. So David, if you don't mind, I'll start and then you jump in. I think the way we described how the citywide deployment would work, you're right, was based on similar to the way David manages TPOs today. So we have the reactive side and the proactive side. We're using hotspot data, and that's actually what the project with EPS is all about as well. So I think what you're suggesting makes sense for us if it's about simplifying what you had described, Councillor Knack and Councillor Wright, that what currently says option 3, the numbers would change. And what you're saying is it's really a modified version of option 4.
Okay, I think, and I'll wait. I know Councillor Knack is next on the list, but I was just trying to piece together what seemed to be coming forward there. I also wanted to ask, whether we're going with option 3 or option 4, can I just get clarity? Like neither of those necessarily get us to having like a static presence or a static component. It would all be roaming, correct? Or do we get there with option 4?
Well, we wouldn't get there with option 4. I think I did some math a few years ago because I was asked what would we need to get 24/7 presence of TPOs at every transit location, and it was something astronomical, like 800 TPOs. Obviously, that's where as public servants, we have to figure out what the best possible options are. And so what I will say is a properly done hotspot deployment has actually, there's lots of crime science behind it to show that it has a good effect at calming issues even when the officers aren't present. In fact, one test of that with the London Underground back in 2016, 2017, showed that there was a better net effect after a prolonged period of time when the transit police weren't there than when they were there, because there was this looming feeling that they would be back at any time. And so that's what we're hoping to implement. Option 4 gets us to the point that we feel like we could hit all of our citywide hotspots with enough effort and routine presence that we could probably get to that place. Option 3, I would suggest that's why whether we write downtown or not, we're going to go to our most, our highest acuity hotspots and try to address them in that same way rather than, try to do everything everywhere and really water down the response like Jen had mentioned.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. I'm short on time, but I'm going to try to get through two more here. I wanted to ask about the ETS control center as well, just recognizing, sounds like there's some physical constraints there. And in order to have effective deployment, you know, it sounds like that is something that's going to have to be addressed in the future here. Is there, like, are there plans to bring something forward on that front? It just seems like a pretty critical component.
Yeah, we have it on our list for CPTF, and I think once we get clarity of how that's all shaking out, it's something we could talk about in the fall. We've been engaging finance and having conversations. We do have a facility that can accommodate the move, and it would just be like for like. We're not looking at, you know, doing anything fancy with it, but we do have some options, and we'll have future conversations.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm out of time.
Thank you. Councillor Knack, can you take the chair, please?
I've got the chair.
So part one of the motion, I heard, Kerry, can be achieved through possible grant funding opportunities, right?
I think so. We feel pretty confident we can pull something off.
Got it. What I am looking for is that as part of a comprehensive approach to safety and perception of safety, enhanced cleaning is important. That funding expires end of December, right?
That's correct.
How much money was that?
It's about half of this budget. I think it was around 2.3 or 2.4 million dollars for the enhanced cleaning on an ongoing basis.
Right, okay, so either we would have to fund through a tax levy increase or not fund it, right?
Correct.
Okay, and that has been very helpful, I understand, to improve
It
the
is, and
safety.
it's intertwined when we ask about perceptions of safety.
Yeah.
Cleanliness and our amenities and the condition of our facilities and fleet do connect to perceptions of safety.
So then why would you not recommend that as part of the options, or the motion was too restrictive in order to explore that?
Honestly, because it's half of the budget and the outcomes that we're seeking are to drive down safety and security disorder and crime, it feels like it's equally important, but this plan that we put forward in the options, we're laser focused on how do we sustain the progress on disorder and crime, drive it down hopefully further. And truly by doing that, we're going to reduce the amount of damage and litter and
Guys, so
cleanliness issues.
there's impact
It's
on.
just about, again, fixed pie. There's only so much we can do.
So you
It's hard
see more TPOs out there reduces the need to do enhanced cleaning as much as we do now because of that impact. Another thing I want to understand, which is very important, we have too many people in our city dying from overdose. The data I saw here, there are a number of overdose incidents on LRT stations, LRT trains, and option 4 will make that situation worse, which to me is absolutely unacceptable. So how do we balance that in option 4, that we deploy as many resources as possible to our TPOs, but also have same level of service, at least what we have now, to prevent overdoses on LRT properties?
I don't think you can, though. Sorry, Jen, were you going to jump in?
Yeah, just, wanting to let everyone know that there are a number of organizations that are serving vulnerable Edmontonians. There's Boyle's Street Works, there's AAWEAR, 4B Harm Reduction, Bear Clan, Water Warriors. There are a number of agencies and organizations, some of which that are funded through CSWB and Health Canada, for example. Our TPOs also are active in responding to drug poisonings. Absolutely hear the concerns. But
my understanding is that our presence of our security guards, DPOs, have responded on their own. Aside from what else is happening out in the public places, that our own people responded to number of overdose calls. I'm trying to find the number here. that would not be possible if we take the resources away from that.
I think what we're saying.
I would suggest, that you know, the TPO is responding to medical calls, drug overdoses, and the like. It is one of our top 4 calls for service across the board.
Yeah.
And, you know, as Jen mentioned, they've been doing this for years. They have St. John's Ambulance awarded them a life-saving award collectively for their work in administering Narcan. Just this weekend, they were involved in 2, delivering CPR and Narcan. Unfortunately, both of those resulted in, in the community deaths. But they're active in that each and every day.
And the final thing I would just offer, Mayor, is we are in active conversations with AHS. This is a medical service, and ensuring that AHS.
I get it until we get to that point. If we reach this point, I will be fine divesting from this. But we have not reached that understanding with AHS yet, right?
We are having conversations right now.
Okay,
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. I will take the chair back.
Do you want to move a second round?
I will move the second round, actually. Yeah.
Second.
A second by Councillor Wright. Please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor Sohi. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That is carried. I'll return to the chair.
I'll take the chair back, and Councillor Knack, you're next, right?
Yeah, thank you. So just picking up on that, let's play out the scenario where we keep the 1.6 million in what we're calling the safety attendant right now. Walk me through sorry, I know it's a long time. So how many stations are we covering with that, give or take? Right now we do 19. How many would we envision?
Yeah, I think we have to take that away. I think we have to do the math and look at, our goal would be to cover as many as we can and at the right times of day where there's higher risk.
Yeah.
And we can turn that around, I think, fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's this question of, are we, I'm hearing the mayor, that's the part that really worries me, because what do we get, multiple emails a week telling us about loss of life in our stations, and so it's I'm worried that the 30 TPOs just can't cover as much space as we have right now, and so this is a sad question to ask, but how many lives do we lose in the meantime to increase safety for, what percentage increase do I get for potentially the lives lost? This is the trade-off conversation that we talk, and that's a crazy question that I'm even asking out loud. And so maybe Ms. Flaman, what do you think? You're having these conversations. What's your optimism rating of getting any type of action from the minister here of being able to address the real loss of life that's even happening today with the resources we have?
Yeah, I don't personally have conversations with the minister, but we do have conversations, administration, and on the ground, we are sharing data. We are wanting to have the folks who are best placed and equipped to respond to the conditions that we find. And I guess this is, I think, the quandary for council and the tension that you need to manage in terms of what are you going to address in transit spaces. Mm-hmm. And so if it's determined that the drug poisoning situation it requires in your mind the security guard complement, then I think that is for you to direct us. Yeah. I don't envy your position.
No, I hear you. I know you're all just trying to give us the best. You want to maximize this investment to get the best outcome, and I'm just trying to figure out and I don't know if it's even worth asking the question. I'm just wondering. I feel like I've lost track of how many times I've been emailed. Do we have a sense of how many times, in 2025, that we've received those emails that says we found somebody unresponsive in a transit center?
We have some numbers from 2024. I would just caution, those are the ones that are confirmed.
Yeah.
With us. I don't have the official record.
That'd
there's
be
lots
an
of
AHS,
times.
yeah.
Exactly, right? Like there's lots of times when people leave our space and you wonder, and it's hard on our dispatchers,
Yeah.
hard on TPOs, hard on the guards.
Yeah.
Like we're all struggling here. And I feel, very compassionate about what you're describing because I think, again, that's the difficulty around trying to do more with the same amount of budget.
Yeah.
It's very difficult. And I know that's not a helpful answer.
No. I like we all get it. Like we're all dealing with it. So
Yeah.
I'm
The
just
number I have from last year, I'll just say.
Yeah, please, if
I don't think it's reflective. I don't think it's reflective of the reality, but
Yeah.
it's somewhere in the neighborhood of just officially reported, confirmed to us. It's about 15 last year.
yeah.
And it's heartbreaking. Like even
Yeah.
one is heartbreaking.
Exactly. I just don't know if I hear your recommendation. I hear Min's recommendation. I want to go all 5 million, but until I feel like I'm really hesitating to the mayor's point about losing that. So I think for the sake of getting something on the board, and then I might even change my own mind as we further this debate. Although I don't know how to, I feel like amending it's going to be almost messier because I really just want to have essentially what's 2 and 3, but number 2 would be $3.4 million to implement a modified option 4, and then number 3 is leaving it as is. So maybe I'll just work with the clerk to see how we would cleanly make that amendment, or if we just should almost restate the motion. That might be easier, but okay, I'll come back around on that.
Okay. Councillor Rutherford?
Yeah, this conversation is like making me wonder if this conversation is premature. And I say that because the March 31st Community and Public Services Committee is the one that we're talking about the transition, and from the motion around where we get involved in spaces that are out of our jurisdiction and where we don't. And we have that report generated, but we haven't really made a concrete decision on that as a council based on what comes back from that report. I see it's not published yet. I don't know. So I guess your team is working on that, I'm guessing, Ms. Flamin. Like, is it better to just even keep things status? Like, it's literally 2 weeks. Like, is it better to just keep this transit report keep status quo until we have that conversation, and then there could be a subsequent or some sort of motion there around this once we have a bigger picture?
Sure, I would offer that we know exactly the demands that we have, and like Eddie, Craig, and I accompanied the TPOs on an end-of-service lockup, and we've had to overstaff the number of folks that we have in order just to secure our transit stations at the end of service so that maintenance and cleaning can happen. It is unsafe. We used to be able to close off with 2, and we now have to have groups of 6. So I'm just sharing that waiting, I can tell you right now the need is here. As administration, we were trying to think of an innovative way to leverage current dollars to increase our TPO complement.
Yeah.
But if that is not the will of council, we are happy to follow direction. I get that this is a difficult decision.
Yeah, and I think that was the motion that was directed to you. I was a little bit apprehensive about that motion originally anyway. And then, I think we did hear a lot of people, at least that community and public services around the public spaces bylaw, that were concerned about, it being, and so then if we now all of a sudden add a bunch of TPOs, does that, right at the same time that we're implementing the public spaces bylaw, there's a lot that as governors we have to think about. And I think one of the problems is this premise of this pie, and I think it's foundationally was the downfall of the bus network redesign, quite frankly. I did not like the bus network redesign. I still don't like the bus network redesign. My area in the ward lost significant service. I have people that have handicaps that do not now have a bus within a close walking distance to them, because that was the premise of the bus network redesign. And so I don't want to duplicate that and just have a false sense of, if this is what we need to create safety, to me it's not either or. It's like what Councillor Stevenson said, it's both and. Maybe the false dichotomy we're having here is that maybe it's really about what do we actually need to create those safety outcomes, and what is that going to cost us? Maybe that's the conversation we have to have. So that harm reduction is still addressed, that the safety of peace, like, maybe we're having the wrong conversation today. Thoughts? I'm gonna just throw that out to
Yeah,
anybody.
and we've brought, we've been asked before, what is the amount of FTEs required to affect a more proactive deployment across the city in service packages in the past, and they just haven't been picked up. So I think those conversations have been attempted to be had during budget decisions, which is exactly when they should be had. And there's lots of fiscal challenges, and I understand that things happen. And so here we are, and again, just seeing an opportunity and presenting it to council for your consideration.
Absolutely. I know. So from a harm reduction perspective, what kind of coverage do we lose? Because I see like the numbers, like, and it's weird because some of them are like 300 some incidents, but only very small deployment of naloxone. Others are less, but more naloxone. Like, is it? I don't even know.
Yeah, I can speak to that a bit, Councillor Rutherford. So the data that we provided shows you what took place last year. And you're right, it's not uniform, and it's not a one-to-one match between high kind of reports of disorder. You're right. I would say at the stations, most stations have 24 hours of coverage. We have a couple that have 18 hours of coverage. And naloxone was added to their contract, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, and TPOs had it added as well. And the TPO numbers are separate from the numbers that we shared. So this is kind of two streams of reporting. But you're right, there's not a relationship necessarily between disorder and reports of crime and the naloxone deployment.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor Jans.
Thank you. I'm fine with option 4. I'm fine with option 3 as amended suggested by I think some of my colleagues. I would prefer that we make a decision and get moving right now. I guess my question to maybe administration is, what feedback have we received from the transit union here? Because weighing heavily on me is the voices of workers, where this is their office and they have a right to a legislated right to a safe workplace.
Yeah, I think from their perspective, they are also struggling with all of the social issues that we all see. It's very challenging for them, and I think they're also very supportive of having more TPOs deployed. So I meet with Steve weekly, as I've mentioned before. I did brief him on the plan that was going forward in this report, and he's aware that the discussion is taking place today.
So, I think I don't know. Can I speak to this now? Where are we at? Okay. Is there an amendment? I guess then, can you clarify?
Councillor Knack is working on some changes.
Okay. I thought, well, maybe, yeah. I'll just hold off. I'll wait for the amendment.
Okay. Now, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Mayor Sahi. So, question to administration, I recall and to address some social issues in our public transit system, we do have car teaming, right?
Correct. There's 7 COT teams that council has funded for transit, and it's an outreach worker with a transit peace officer from David's team.
So that COT team is still under function and with approved budget. And I recall we actually increased the capacity for the COT team and from small number of the team and to the bigger number of the team.
Yeah, that's correct. And we operate 23 hours a day with COT, 7 days a week.
Okay, so that means if any concerns regarding some social issues or human interaction, and the COT team is still under the function to address that. So it's safe to say that, right?
Yes, they're available, and their time is split between proactively going out to the stations and also responding to support the rest of the TPO cadre across the transit network.
So that piece is still going on. And right now, the options in front of us from administration is to respond to the demanding increase for the capacity and also to the safety needs. And from that sustainable progress perspective. So that is the focus. That is the focus we try to address to really enhance that safety from long-term perspective. So is that my understanding correct?
If I understood correctly, you're looking at that the hotspot, the proactive response is looking at long-term effects to really bring down our overall complaints.
Yes, and I try to get a sense from administration. Because I heard concern from my colleagues, they concern about this options will be like too premature. I just try to get a sense of the urgency right now for us to address that safety concern, and from different angle, from like the demand and the capacity, how we address this demand, and also from safety leads. That is why this option is in front of us. So I try to get some like clarification on that piece.
Yeah, I think to give you some context, in 2021, the TPOs went to just over 50,000 calls for service. You know, to your point about the ongoing demand, last year we were at about 70,000 calls for service. So an increase in 20,000 calls for service over the course of the last 4 years.
Okay, so these more, I understand that now. That data actually demonstrates the needs and needs to be addressed. Okay, thank you. I will yield my time and stop there.
Thank you, Councillor Knack. Can you take the chair, please?
I've got the chair.
So, in my response to earlier question, Jennifer, you said there are a number of community-based mutual aids organizations that intervene in cases of overdoses.
That's correct.
Do they do that on LRT stations, LRT trains?
Sometimes they are in the transit spaces. They go to where the vulnerable populations are that they serve. So they follow where the vulnerable population is moving.
And they are connected to their population, they have a relationship with their population, right? So why would we not, I know we don't want to go into social services, but security, safety, and providing safety is our responsibility. So I understand why we need to put more resources to our DPOs, which I support. But until we sort out things with AHS, overdoses happening on our property, we have an obligation, right? I mean, maybe not constitutional obligation, but we do have moral obligation. Somebody dying or, almost dying because of overdose on something that we own, on our property. So why would we not work with those social agencies, those mutual aid organizations, give them more capacity as we sort out the health part on the AHS side?
So are you asking that some of this money be diverted into a grant of some sort
so
to
I'm
those?
saying if you take, say, 1 million out of it or 1.6 million out of it, work with those mutual aid organizations, build their capacity to respond better on LRT stations, LRT properties, trains, until we convince province to do their work and fulfill their responsibilities.
I guess when we did our analysis, we were focused on the incidences of social disorder and crime that was being reported.
Absolutely.
So that's why we were focusing on the TPO.
And I absolutely get that, and I support that. I know why you're recommending that, because you're focusing on what is our responsibility. But what I'm struggling with is that if we completely implement option 4, we are leaving vulnerable population on our system, on our properties, without support, and that will lead to more casualties, right? I want to avoid that. So maybe best way might be that we carve out a portion of the money, then you work with those agencies, give them the support that they can respond instead of security guards responding. Because if we eliminate that, right, then work with AHS to figure out the long term.
I wonder of the unintended impacts. You know, we've not done any analysis on that, and you might actually, like, if the primary focus is on ensuring naloxone is administered in those stations where security guards already are, then I would recommend just keep the security guards there, because I don't think you'll get as much bang for your buck
I see,
in terms of trying to get mutual aids to fill that gap, because I don't know what their capacity is, and I think that's
Because
so,
security guards are already there, right? They're
Yeah.
present, okay.
Yeah,
And
so-
what would that look like? How much money would be required for us to at least have presence on some of the stations where we have the highest number of overdoses?
I feel like we're like programming on the fly.
I
So,
understand that,
like,
yeah.
when we get in
Yeah.
situations where we're just
Yeah.
dropping the dollars and say, let's do this and see what happens, I think if we're gonna do things like that, we should take it away, look at the program objectives, see if we can bring up something that makes more sense, instead of trying to program on the fly.
Yeah. Okay, I hear that. But for me, struggle is that if we go with option 4, I just cannot in good conscience walk from this meeting and feel, asleep at night, knowing that our decision will end up putting more vulnerable population into situations where they will die. Even though it's not our responsibility, it's provincial responsibility, because it's healthcare, but we just can't ignore that reality. Right? So,
Yeah,
okay.
and we're happy to take back whatever council looks like, and if they're willing to explore it, just to approve something now or say that that'll work.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think we'd have to go
understand.
back and
I
look at the
understand.
program
Okay,
itself.
got it, understand. Okay, Councillor, I'll take so I'll move the additional round.
Second.
Second by Councillor Wright, please vote.
I'm a yes.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. We have all the votes.
Please display the vote. That's carried.
I'll take the chair back,
I'll return the chair.
and over to you.
So to that point, Mr. Obar, I just feel like instead of trying to program on the fly, I don't want to refer back because we've already got a million things, but at the same time, I'm hearing not the motion on the floor. I'm hearing more TPOs than option 3 provides, maybe as many as all of option 4, but to get a sense of what we would need to at least consider on the drug poisoning side, because that does seem to be an issue. So do we refer back with a very narrow scope of for you to do that? Like, does that allow you to go do that program?
Yeah, I think we've heard lots here tonight. I think we have a motion that's on the floor. I think what I would want to do is return to council and say, here's what the impact of this motion means. Just so that you can see which stations were covered, the stations that we wouldn't have coverage at, and the impact of the motion itself.
Yeah, and so I think maybe instead of, you will just refer the report back, noting that the motion that's on the floor, I think we were going to modify anyways. So we wanted to give more than option 3 provided, and really looking at a 2-stream piece, which is either full TPOs or TPOs with some level of security guard or somebody that can respond to that. So as long as we refer it back and you're not going and getting 5 more scenarios, I think you have a sense of where we want to go.
Yep, as long as it's friendly for the mover there, I think.
Well, a referral motion doesn't have to be friendly to
there
the
you go,
mover, so
sorry,
I
yeah.
will move that we refer to the next counts. I think that's messy. If they know what we want additional information on, and they've got a sense now of the more narrow scope, and then we're really just debating going a full contingent of bylaw of TPOs or 75% and what that other amount gets us. So I think we just refer and let them go do that work and come back at the next council meeting. So I'll move the
Second.
Can I just add one quick thing? It's Carrie. If you could be really specific for us of what the dollar amount is that you want us to basically do the costing for the TPO option, that tells me what's left. And then that allows us to look at our data and figure out what kind of coverage you could have for the naloxone side at the stations.
Yeah, I feel like I don't want to get into the nitpicky of exactly hundreds of thousands, but in the order of $3.5 to $4 million to TPOs, and then the remainder, just so you have a little bit of wiggle room. And can restate it. Yeah, Councillor Stevenson can restate if we just want to make that motion today. But I've heard debate.
So I'll come to that. Are you done, Councillor Knack?
I get, yeah, let's go to the original mover and then
Yeah.
I will move a referral if she doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it, okay. Councillor Stevenson, you want to
Yeah.
restate
Yeah,
your?
thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll state my motion to say, number one, 3.4 million to implement a modified option 4, and point two, 1.6 million to implement a safety attendant program at hotspot locations during station opening times.
Great, okay, does that, I think that captures the, I see thumbs up from admin, okay? I'm sorry? Yeah, so 3.4 million, so eliminate part 1. The amount in point 2 goes to 3.4 million and 1.6 part 3.
No, part 3 was.
Yeah, so part 1, when you look at the original motion, part 1 is eliminated. Then part 2, which will become part 1, will be 3.4 million, which is hiring TPOs. And part 3 will be part 2, which will be $1.6 million for unit attendance and safety, the overdose prevention. That's how you see it, right?
Yeah, I could just restate it more completely.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the motion will now read that administration reallocate portions of the existing ongoing funding for commissioners, including point 1, 3.4 million to implement a modified option 4, and 2, 1.6 million to implement a safety attendant program at hotspot locations during station opening time.
No, I think with this, we don't have to refer it. We can vote on it. Yeah. Okay. Okay, is that clear now? I'll come on the screen. I'll come on the screen. Councillor Rutherford, do you have questions on that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead then.
Yeah, I actually really like the idea of a referral. I hear the sense of urgency and those kind of things, but I also think I need to understand what taking 1.6 million away from either commissioners or TPOs has as a consequence. So I guess I am contemplating yeah, but if it's gonna fail, then what? I guess I'll go to Mr. McEwen. Thoughts on the restated motion in terms of 1.6?
My thoughts would be, I've said it before, our best professional advice was option 4. TPOs do respond to overdose situations. I totally understand the desire to mix both. I think what we can do, we can work with this. We can work with any of the options we've proposed. The bullet number 2 was an option we had in the report. So I mean, taking it back and allowing us some time to better define what it would look like would give council more assurance in terms of what those details would look like. But we would be able to operationalize how this would look, and then we could also just report back in terms of, this is how we will operationalize the option or the direction we've been given.
Well, this isn't direction, like if it's a referral motion, this is where I guess to the clerk. If I do put a referral motion on the floor, this motion that's on the floor basically doesn't exist anymore because that one trumps it.
That's correct.
So like, I just want to be clear that this isn't direction, like if I do a referral motion, this is not direct, that is supported, this would not be direction. I think it could be direction in terms of like, my motion could say, please, based on the motion that was on the floor, do further analysis. But you could still come back and recommend, based on that analysis, option 4 is still the best option.
Yeah, no, like option 4 is our best professional advice. I would say if we're going to adjust the numbers that we've provided in the report, our best thing to do would be to take it away. Let's recalculate what it means, and then we can provide that information.
Yeah, because we don't even know how many TPOs do we get with 3.4.
We would need to calculate that.
Yeah.
So we would be approving this without knowing the actual, like the detail of it. So if there were to be, I would say, direction outside of our best professional advice, then I would say let's take it back and we'll go from there.
Okay. And then one quick question to Ms. Houghton McDonald. Like, I know that people are referencing CUDA and some of the recommendations that were in that, but that wasn't take away from commissionaires or TPOs to do these things. Like, that's not the recommendation in that CUDA report. It's add these things, augment your base with these things.
You are correct. That's right. It was all the things that they recommended nationally that should be in place. And I think they even had different swim lanes for the different orders of government for different other components as well.
Okay. So I think with that in mind, I think I'm going to do I would either probably vote no to this, or I can do a referral. So I think I'll just try a referral and see what happens.
Second.
So this report be referred back to administration to do further analysis on 3.4 million for implementation of option 4 and 1.6 million for implementation of the safety attendant program, and report back at the next council meeting.
Okay, we on the referral now. Any questions on the referral?
Can I quickly introduce?
Oh, yes. I thought you were introducing your questions. Well, go ahead.
I was asking questions to see if I was going to put a referral on the floor. I just want to quickly say that, this is maybe not ideal. I know there is a sense of urgency, but I also think that we need to know the full scope of what we're deciding on. And I think I need to be able to weigh option 4 in its totality with this option that's on the motion to know what is the best course of action and what the consequences of either course is. Please consider supporting.
Thank you. Questions on the referral? Anyone to speak to the? Oh, questions. Sorry, Councillor. Oh, those are questions on referral. Questions on referral. Councillor Rice.
So I appreciate the idea to refer back, but we heard over and over and from administration, their professional advice is just to receive as information and then move forward with option 4. I'm not comfortable to support the motion even on the floor to take that $1.6 million to implement the safety attendant program. My question is, even though we have more research refer back and more research, more analysis come back, but what's the points we are creating this safety attending program? Maybe I should ask a question. What's the difference this safety attendant program from we already have?
Sorry, point of order. Can we focus on the referral?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to jump in once that. Yes, thank you. First, just before we'll pause Councillor Rice's time, I do just need at least one more member of council online to turn on the camera, just so we can confirm quorum. I can see Councillor Salvador. I just need one other to make sure I have that. So, Councillor Rice, if you're asking questions, it'd be
Yeah. So
and then just to make sure, we're going to ask questions just on the referral now at this point as to whether the report should be referred in the first place.
Okay. When this referral will come back, what's the timeline?
On the data side of things, we can pull together the analysis within a couple weeks. So I think it would just be a matter of it getting it on an agenda.
The due date on the report has now shown up on the screen, Councillor Rice.
Okay, it's April.
Yeah,
April.
so the next available council
online.
meeting. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first question. The second question, are you going to provide the information in this referral report and to specifically define what is the safe attendant program and what's the difference between this safety attendant and to the car team already doing and to the TPOs already doing?
If that's for administration, I think we can include that with our information that we follow up with.
So the third question is about the hotspot location. So to determine hotspot location, are you going to attach all the data and all the analysis for the each different stations?
Yes, that's what we do.
For hotspot analysis, I would have to consult with our lawyers because that's information that needs to be protected under FOIP for law enforcement operations. And so I'm not sure if we'd be able to put all of that information in, but that's certainly something we can take away to look at.
So if we don't know how the hotspot location be determined and without this certain information, and then how you can do the analysis to see the impact from this. And that I just want to make sure that analysis is really meaningful analysis, could provide the sufficient information for us to make a decision when this report come back.
So I think in the attachment, we showed the volume of reports from the commissionaires and the volume of naloxone deployed. I think we can use that same list to inform the analysis of these options. And then David may need to have something in private. If I heard what you just, okay, he's nodding based on what I heard him just say. There might be a supplemental piece that he has in private. I do think we'll have data-driven analysis to share, and we'll try and make it as clear as possible about the breakout, hearing all the feedback today and the requests to understand what's behind these two figures and what that would look like. We can make sure we bring that forward.
And also the impact by reduce from $5 million to $3.4 million.
Correct. Correct.
And
Well, you'll be able to contrast them both, for sure.
Okay, so I will leave there, but I'm not comfortable and for this.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Councillor Wright.
Thank you. So when it gets referred back, comes back to us, will we, and I think this was what Councillor Rice was getting at, will we have a definition of what a safety attendant is? Because what's in the report definition is for a station attendant, and that's only customer service.
Yeah, I think I can put together a summary of what I think we're talking about. It sounds like I heard in the introduction of this item, and Councillor Stevenson can correct me, that she talked about doing kind of litter collection and just tidying up to supplement cleaning efforts, and a little bit of customer support as well. So we'll see if we can blend this together and make sense of it, and bring something back for you to assess in this follow-up.
Because Carrie, because I mean, I'm thinking the importance is on the naloxone and that and the safety, not the cleaning up and customer service. Because in the report it also talks about that it's the commissionaires that deploy the naloxone.
Correct. I think that is definitely the bulk of the need, and hearing the conversations, the naloxone component is going to be the primary for sure.
So, Councillor, what you're describing is a security guard. I mean, so I think we have to make sure that whoever is going to be fitting the bill, they need training, right? So naloxone, you need to get special training. So I think we just need to clarify what it is we're looking for by way of these attendants. I guess we can't ask for, all these things. I think the team would probably get some good help if we narrow that down.
Yeah, that's why I want sort of a definition, if we're referring back, saying safety attendants, what those are actually. And maybe they are commissionaires. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Tang?
Point of order.
Yeah.
And then I think this is back to the same question I asked earlier, and then.
But that's not a point of order, sorry. What are your point of order?
The point of order and then is about, we should ask a question about the referral, and it is something, is the same point of order.
Got it, okay.
Earlier.
Okay, got it. Okay, Councillor Tang, go ahead.
Does it matter to administration if what whatever you propose won't won't be activated now versus in 3 weeks?
Well, I think that what we're saying is we'd rather take that back and make sure that council has a full
Yeah.
view of what the change will look like to make sure that we're all on the same page. So if that takes us 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get there, then we're okay with that.
And then just to be clear too, I think earlier I also heard the mayor suggest almost like a third item around $1 million to community outreach organizations who could patrol, some of these locations. So I just want to, like right now, if we refer this back, that would not be part of any of those contemplation, right?
Not the way I read that
Yeah.
motion.
Okay. Just in the interest of time, actually, you know what? I'll wait to come back and speak on this one.
Okay, Councillor Stevenson?
Thank you. Sorry about that. So just in terms of safety attendants, maybe to Ms. Houghton McDonald, just want to confirm that there is some clarity. So it would absolutely be the roles of a security guard in the sense of calling in issues, de-escalating, encouraging proper behaviors. I think the enhancements are recognizing that between responding to events, our security guards are often walking around, observing, not doing other active tasks. And so the question is, can they be doing some other duties that complement and enhance safety during those times? And of course, again, continue with the Lockstone administration. Is that sort of a fair understanding?
I think so. I think we can take that away as part of the analysis and bring back our thoughts for the April 8th and 9th meeting.
Great. I really appreciate that. And then just with the referral, so I think that's a great idea to do some further analysis. Will you be able to come back with, I think maybe the biggest tension I'm hearing is sort of the question of constant coverage versus sort of the moving resources. So will there be some sort of analysis that X number of stations will have X number of hours of coverage at different times of day? Is that possible?
So for the safety attendant piece, that's absolutely what it will be. I'm not sure, David, if you want to speak to the first part.
Well, I think we tried that with attachment 3 just to show you sort of our presence across the entire system. But earlier today, Carrie described the length of kilometers, the number of trains, the number of buses, the number of transit stops, the number of bus stops, all of those things. And so, we're expected to cover all of those with calls for service. So I'm not sure exactly how we would quantify at this time this station would be covered, because that is a very fluid thing with operational planning.
Yeah, and I think that the key question that we're grappling with is just around that constant presence. And so trying to show the trade-off between those things. And again, it is a trade-off. I'm not suggesting one is right or wrong. But I think having a clearer picture that, this is how many places would have continuous coverage. This is, this is what wouldn't with the other option. I'm just also wondering if, with the breakdown on point 1, that we'll also have a sense of, specific numbers of officers versus other equipment they might need that funding may go to, just so again, we just have that real sense of the number and what that money is going to.
So that's a question about the peace officer designation. This is for peace officers equipped with the current authorities, with the current tools, incorporating in our fleet needs and any equipment, etc. It does not account for any new tools that we might explore as part of the enhanced authority report that comes back in Q2 in 2026. I anticipate that we may be able to explore some enhanced authorities before then, again, depending on our staffing components. But any sort of new capital needs, we'd have to return with a suggestion.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I think it's just understanding, like, with the option 4, as it currently stands with that 5 million. Again, is that all officers completely? Are there additional costs for equipment or vehicles?
I see your question now. So this is the 30 officers. There's also, and we didn't get into the nitty gritty of it, but there's also ancillary resources and, you know, analysts, support team, all that kind of thing that goes on in the background to support the team through leadership positions as well that we baked into that. We just reported on the number of frontline staff because we know that's typically how we've been reporting our TPO component.
Great. Yeah, and I think having those details for the 3.4 million option would be really helpful in the conversations. But yeah, thank you. I think further analysis and referral makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Knack, can you? Oh, it's okay. Don't worry. But I just maybe can, Councillor Knack, can you take the chair?
I've got the chair.
Like on the referral, I don't know why it is so complicated. You know how many TPOs you can get with 5 million? 30 TPOs, right? That's what option 4 is.
Correct.
I think if I can provide just a little bit of elaboration there, I think to Councillor Stevenson's point, it's 30 frontline TPOs, but we've baked in, you know, leadership management and support needs.
So,
so
David, if you can do that analysis of 5 million, you have $5 million. You do the analysis, they give you TPO with sports staff system, right?
Yep.
If you have $3.4 million, you can do that very quickly. How many TPOs, sports staff, and all that is needed. So I don't know why this is so complicated.
It's not about the TPO staff or that strategy. It's about, like, you can easily do the math on how many it is. It's how you deploy them.
Yeah.
So if you look at this, how many hours a day do you have? Where do you deploy those people? Look at your hotspot locations.
But you will do that. You'll do that with 30 as well. So
yes.
So I think that's a separate conversation. Now, what I'm saying that we have need in the system, and we're going to would delay another 3 weeks, right? So that's what my concern is. Like, you know, anyways, I'll speak to the referral.
Okay, I'll return the chair.
The chair back. Okay, to speak to the referral, Councillor Tang.
Okay, I think I'll just speak this once, regardless of what happens. I will not be supporting the referral. I am not clear on what tangible difference in terms of the information we're going to get in 3 weeks. Transit safety is an ongoing conversation, and I think as governors, we give direction to administration to say, and we've been talking about perception of safety for for a long time, whether it's a community advisory report, whether it's administration report, whether it's a youth council report, whether it's emails we get. I think perception is what we're trying to do here. We say, administration, please improve this issue, and they go back and they do a lot of analysis and they come back with the best recommendation. I feel a lot of apprehension about kind of a TPO only option, but I am also worried that any change to this very limited amount of resource is going to significantly limit the impact. And while it's great that we want to boil the ocean, so to speak, in terms of hitting all the targets we want to hit, the more we kind of water it down, I'm just worried that's not going to achieve, I think, the goals that administration is setting out to achieve, and then we set them up for failure and not meeting that expectation. I know there's a lot of apprehension about this is the one time we get to do something creative on transit safety, and I don't know if that's true. I'm hearing that we will deploy and we will evaluate, and if it's not achieving those goals, then we will change tactic. And I think some of the other options, even through this presentation, we have heard that there's other avenues we could be exploring. And I'm interested in some of those. So I don't know if this is gonna be that, the one time we can be creative around transit safety. And at the end of the day, I feel like, especially to those, living my ward along the LRT, I don't know if any kind of mixture of formula here is necessarily going to have a tangible impact. But if we are only gonna have a limited resource, then I would rather it go into somewhere strategic and focused. I caution that some of the bigger, subway metro system around the world, like the New York subway, in this past year, state governor had injected 1,000 state troopers into the subway system. That hasn't changed the headline around the violence and crime and social disorder or whatever. However, I do think in the option 4, proposed the train team, that is something I'm consistently hearing from people. The other thing I will echo Councillor Jan's too is, this past week I have met with a number of labor union representatives for transit. And everyone agrees that when it comes to transit safety, we need a very comprehensive approach. But when we are faced with very limited funding resource, and if we want a material impact, what is being proposed here is what they would like to see happen. In terms of the point earlier raised from administration around other boots on the ground, working with our various community partners, I feel like that's a conversation I've been trying to push for the past 3 years, this whole term. I don't think we're there yet to and I don't know how realistic it is to expect that will be part of this conversation. I think everyone plays different roles. So I'll just put that out there. On the safety attendant, I like the idea of, yes, having this very comprehensive role that's very similar to what the securities are doing right now. Again, the more we dissect this apart, the more we say a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit there, or divide up this pot in a few different ways, are we going to achieve the impact? And I'm worried that we're not. So even if 3 weeks isn't gonna make a huge difference, we've been talking about this for a long time, and I just would like to see some of the actions to get going.
Thank you, Councillor Tang. Councillor Knack. Oh, you are? Okay, why don't you speak then?
Sure. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Sorry, I jumped in right at the last second. Yeah, I know it's a very long time, and so I actually really appreciate the discussion as much as I'm sure we're all out of patience, all of us, on both sides of this. The only part that causes me to hesitate, because I feel like I just agreed with almost everything our previous Councillor Tang just said, the part that I'm worried about, where I feel like I have a slight issue, is that, and this is why I feel like I might want to still get this information, is that I know we can't cover everything, and I know, the ultimate solution is a greater funding source. To get everywhere we need to right now. But I am worried that part of what adds to the perception of safety, and again, this is going to sound so glib, somebody who's passed out or unresponsive or frankly has maybe lost their life, that I know also contributes to safety, right? I mean, it's hard when you go outside in any part of the city and you see somebody who's in a state that is a very unsafe situation. And for some people, I think they're very, not comfortable, but able to respond and react. I think others view that as an unsafe situation. And so if all we have is this one resource, are we actually going to be moving the needle on the perception of safety? And so that's the only reason I somewhat want to see this additional data, just to get a sense of how many spaces can we actually cover, and maybe it's not meaningful enough. And I hear the point around we're just trying to spread a very limited dollar amount very thin. So that's the only reason I'm hesitating I hear the point, why not just vote on it now, but I'm still leaning a little towards getting that data in 3 weeks. just so I can understand how we can impact things. So I'm interested in other thoughts though, but thank you.
Can you take the chair now?
Yeah, I've got the chair.
Thank you. You know, this conversation really speaks to the broader issue, how the lack of investment in our social infrastructure is impacting safety, perception of safety, and well-being of Edmontonians. We don't have the tools to fix those social issues. Province does, federal government does. Yes, they're stepping up, they're doing more, but not to the level that is necessary and needed in our communities. So the ramification is that the services that we provide, particularly such as transit, is impacted by disorder and impacted by safety issues, and vulnerable people, Edmontonians, seek shelter in those places when they have no other place to go. And unfortunately, in those places, they do use drugs, which leads to overdoses, which is a healthcare crisis, which is a mental health crisis, not created by the city, not created by city policies, not created by lack of support from the city, but we are dealing with those symptoms. As a municipality, we have a responsibility to invest to make our system a safer place, which we are doing. This council has stepped up. We increased TPOs, we increased police funding, we increased COT teams, and with this proposal, we will have more TPOs. Where I'm really struggling is that even though it's not our responsibility, we cannot let people die in the places that we own, that we run. And I think having this motion allows us to respond to the needs and move forward quicker, not delay by another 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and have more TPOs, but also have safety attendants at hotspot locations where we see the highest amount of overdoses. I don't know what more information we would have. As governors, our role is to remain at high level, and I think this motion is high level at that point. And our administration are the experts. They'll figure out how many TPOs they will be able to hire and how many additional staff would be required, and they'll figure out how many attendants will be hired with or retained with 1.6 million, and will they'll be deployed. And they will usually report back as part of the transit safety plan. I don't know how often we report on that, but there's mechanism to do that. So I understand why Councillor Rutherford is proposing this, but I think let's move on, pass the motion, let the administration do the work, and then figure out where might gaps be, right? And so I would not be supporting this. I think it's time that we just can't continue to delay these investments that are important to make our transit system safe. Okay. With that, I'll take the chair back and go to Councillor Rutherford.
I'll return the chair.
Yeah, I'm getting quite emotional about this one, actually. Probably the first time I think I've actually come close to tears in chambers because of what Councillor Knack said. It's like we're literally trading off people's lives. And then we're saying that we can't have another 3 weeks to get them out, or we're going too much into the weeds. And I think to illustrate this and why this is important, because honestly, if the referral motion fails today, I'm going to be voting no to the main motion, and I will be voting yes to the option. I will defer to the expertise of our administration and go with option 4. Because if they are the experts, then I don't know why we're not taking their expert advice. But what option 4 says is there would still be full coverage of the network. I don't have line of sight at 3.4 million or 1.6 million what that coverage looks like. And I will tell you right now that even though these 3 stations are not in the ward that I represent, many of the people that I represent go to these stations, and that's Eau Claire, Castle Downs, and Northgate. We heard about Southgate and its problems. We've heard about all of the other Millwoods that are not necessarily LRT. I don't have a sense of if I approved 3.4 million and reallocated to safety attendants in hotspot locations, which would be likely central, what does that leave north? And then I'll have to answer to the constituents to say, why did you remove the station attendants in Northgate transit station? And I'll have to say, oh, well, 3 weeks, we couldn't get a proper analysis for me to know, so it just passed. So to say that it's in the weeds when I have that accountability to the people that I represent, I think is unfair, and I do not have line of sight into where and how this motion that was proposed by Councillor Stevenson will work. I do understand option 4. So my intent with the referral motion was to entertain the idea of not going all the way to TPOs. But if council today does not want to do that, I am fine with the referral motion failing, and then I am fine with voting no to the main motion on the floor, and then supporting. We want to make a decision today. I'm one of the biggest advocates in just making a decision. And we have punted so many decisions where I have said, just make a decision. That's probably also why I'm getting emotional. Because this is real people's lives. This is people that need to use these stations across our transit system to get to and from places safely. And I don't know what the impacts of this are. Does it mean, yeah, great, that like Churchill gets more people, and so that's a great benefit for Churchill, but does it mean Southgate, which is a real problem right now, according to our own report, is left with less? So I also think the fact that we've had this conversation for so long tonight, and not even just tonight, because we had it earlier today, and we're still here having this conversation, and we do not have a full complement of our council, is also another reason that we should likely consider being able to have this discussion and grapple with this as a full council, and not bear the burden of whatever decision we're making, which is a life or death decision, quite frankly, the burden on the shoulders of the 9 of us that are here. So I hope you consider supporting my referral motion. If not, I have a course of action for tonight, and I'm happy to do that course of action. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. So please vote. What happened here?
Waiting for 2 more votes.
Here we go.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jens. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Okay, so we are on to 7.5, which is
7-6.
Oh yeah, 7.5 is just done. 7.6, monthly update on Dutch elm disease in Edmonton. Verbal report.
Good evening. We are joining you from the roof, almost like what Ms. Flaman said around an angel in the sky of voices. But we're here to present our monthly update on Dutch elm disease and the progress that has been made since our last update in February. Joining me today virtually is Mark Beer, Director of Infrastructure Operations. We're here to provide an update on the status of Dutch elm disease in Edmonton and our continued work to ensure our urban canopy remains healthy and protected. At our last update during February 26, 2025 council meeting, we provided an update on pruning, testing, and the communications treatment plan for 25. Has been no positive cases since the 5th case, which was confirmed in October of 2024. For our next update in May, we'll be providing a written report that includes a status update and it outlines the treatment plan that will begin in Q2 of this year. Mark Bear will walk you through the remainder of our presentation and our update for this evening.
Thanks, Caitlin. Good evening, Council. Since our last update, there's been minimal ongoing testing and no new positive results. There are currently no outstanding tests pending results. So on this slide, I wanted to provide an update on pruning. Crews have made really good progress during the winter and have now pruned 1,092 out of 1,218 boulevard and park elms in the protocol zone, which is nearly 90%. Crews will have this project completed on schedule by the end of March. Next slide. So next I wanted to provide a summary of our ongoing work and next steps. The Dutch elm disease treatment plan has been in development over the winter and is scheduled to be implemented in Q2 this year. This treatment plan will use a preventative fungicide injection, Arbitec 20S, on select trees within the protocol zone. Injection suitability assessments will evaluate tree size, vitality, and condition for viability of systemic injections. Our crews are currently learning and training for injections that will occur in the months ahead. Extensive surveying and monitoring of elm trees inside and outside of the protocol zone will occur, and deadwood removal and preparation for proactive removals of poor condition elms will continue to be prioritized work. We prepared our communications plan for 2025 as we continue to share information and reminders with Edmontonians, encouraging them to learn more and to help protect the tree canopy. And we continue to update edmonton.ca/Dutch elm as the primary source for public information. Lastly, we're going to continue to provide ongoing information in the PARS Weekly Council Update email, and we'll provide an update on the latest actions and treatment plan in the future Dutch elm disease written council report in May. This concludes our monthly update presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you so much. I think Councillor Rice, you exempted this, right? Go ahead, please.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so I do not have questions because it must be selected, but I will be happy to put to the motion, just receive the information if that is proper.
Okay, please do now. Okay.
Yeah,
got it. Need a second?
Second.
Second, Councillor Rutherford?
No, right.
Oh, Councillor Wright seconded it? Okay. All right, so questions on this? Councillor Rutherford, go ahead.
Just to confirm, you said that that in May you'll do a written report?
That's what's in the last motion. Yeah, was monthly verbal reports culminating with a written report in May. Yeah.
Okay, and when is it? I don't know anything about Dutch elm disease in terms of its seasonality. Is there more of a risk of something changing in April, or what kind of time? When do we start to see potentially the bugs or the things? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do, and so that's why our pruning season is throughout the winter and ending in March, because that's when trees are dormant, and so are the insects that transmit Dutch elm disease. So in the spring, once we start to see trees greening, that's also going to be when you're going to start to see insects coming out. The banded elm bark beetle, which is the main transmitter for Dutch elm disease, and that's when the risk increases.
Okay, so it's prudent to have another verbal up, because right now you would have another verbal in April and then the written in May, or just come back with the written in May?
Just May, yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's all I wanted clarity on. And
Or just to add some peace of mind as well, we have our robust inspections program, which has occurred over the winter time, which is also occurring throughout the season. So we had provided a bit of an update in the last in February around what that inspection will look like per ward, and we're actively completing those.
yeah, no, and I appreciate that, and I think that's one of the reasons that I was inclined to want to hear one more verbal report to see if those had produced anything. I know that there's definitely some in the area that I represent that are concerned with a lot of boulevard trees and knowing that it's hit close. Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Rutherford. Okay, we have motion on the floor. Anyone to speak to it? Councillor Rice to close.
Nothing new to add it.
Please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. So that is done. What is remaining is 9.4, right?
Yes, 9.4, and then we just need to deal with motions for the
Motions.
private items at
So
the
can
end.
someone move that we go in camera?
So moved, subject to section 2425.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
We are live.
Okay, so 9-2, Councillor Wright.
I would like to move receipt of information for the Enterprise Commons update.
Second.
And keep in private, subject to 19 and 27 of FOIP.
Okay, please vote.
Just waiting on one vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Jans. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Now 9-4.
I'll move receipt of information for 9-4 and keep in private sections to subject to sections 24 and 25 of FOIP.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried.
No. I move update 9.5.
Okay, thank you. And keep it private.
No, it can be public.
Councillor Wright, you want to second that?
Second.
Okay. Okay, all right, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Now we will deal with,
We did technically have a motions pending on the agenda, but just to be clear, it will be laid over because Councillor.
yes,
Smith
that
is
will
not
be
here.
laid over. We need to deal with the order of the day, order of the schedule for the executive committee.
Yes, I believe someone would like to request to make a motion without customary notice to do a calendar change.
I'll move that.
Councillor Wright be made.
Councillor Wright can. Yeah, that you can move to the, I have to give you the motion without the customary notice. So I'm moving that for Councillor Wright to be able to do that.
Without customary notice,
Yes.
please vote.
Were you seconding that?
Councillor Wright seconded.
Just waiting on one vote. We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Now, Councillor Wright, you want to move that?
I would like to move that we are changing the orders of the day for March 31st for CPSC from 9 till noon, and that the orders of the day for April 2nd, Executive Committee, call to order at 1:30, recess at March 31st at 5 p.m., continue on Wednesday, April 2nd at 9:30, with a lunch break between noon and 1:30, and adjourn at 5 p.m.
I'll second that. Oh, Councillor Rutherford seconded it. Let the record be shown and shine. Okay, please vote.
We have all the votes.
Display the votes, please. That is carried. Motions pending. None. Notice of motions and motions without customary notice. We don't have any, right? No notice of motions without customary. We just dealt with one. Anything else? Wow, we are adjourned at 8:39. 20 minutes before schedule time.
Well, we